Save the Semantics, episode 276. It is October 9th, 2024. My name is Myra. This is the podcast where I ramble on for a bit about some shit. Recording this in the middle of the week because I did record earlier on Monday for last week's episode. So yeah, just a little bit of a hiccup there, but it's all right. It happens, Sometimes life gets in the way, and then you got to adapt and all that stuff. But whatever, it's not that big of a deal. It's been a nice little week. The heat has sort of died down in the last couple of days. I think right now, at least today, I'm starting to feel we're kind of getting back into that fall. The more appropriate fall weather, and it seems that sort of heat wave has kind of passed, at least right now. Obviously I don't want there to be any other ones that might pop up later this month, but based on just kind of weather forecasts and that kind of thing, it is seemingly looking like it's gonna just stay sort of cool for the rest of the next and kind of upcoming weeks. So that's nice. That's something to kind of to look forward to. Other than that, it's been sort of, it's been a good week. I've sort of been I've had the chance, obviously, to continue to kind of catch up with preseason basketball and that kind of thing in the last couple of days. There are some ones coming up later tonight, obviously, that have my attention. Most notably the Warriors and Kings preseason game. It will be interesting, I think, to see if we're going to continue to have that lineup that we did, the starting lineup we had on Saturday, or I think Saturday's preseason game against the Clippers, and it would be nice to see some of the other younger players show out and show some of their talent, and whether they could potentially break into the rotation. I think would be really cool to watch. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm also interested in seeing what the Kings are going to look like with DeRozan. I mean, they're probably going to be a very good offensive team, but defensively, it's probably going to be a bit to be desired. As it kind of has been for the last couple of years since they've had some success. But I think that DeRozan is probably going to help them at least have some stability when it goes into like the fourth quarter. Because really, I noticed when the Warriors did play like the Kings and that kind of thing. I mean, they beat us a handful of times, but I did notice that sometimes their kind of offense gets a little held up a little bit. Because outside of Fox, it's like you got Malik Monk, who's a good player, but outside of that, they don't really have like a ton of like offensive, just like a go-to talent that can really shoulder the offense for stretches, and DeRozan's kind of the he was sort of in the running for clutch player of the year for the last few seasons. So or at least when they introduced the award. So that'll probably help those guys out over there. But yeah, defensively, I don't know how bad or how good that's gonna look. It's probably not gonna be super great. It's more like gonna be just kind of a continuation. But yeah, I'm excited to see. Obviously, I'm excited to see some more basketball. Kind of get more of a gauge on what things are gonna look like, right? I do think there's only so much that you can take away from preseason games, because it's not like they're gonna give you all of the plays and all of the what it's gonna look like in a full game setting, right? Because you don't have the main guys playing significant minutes. It's really like more or less than half of the game itself, right? 20 minutes or so. So it's like you just don't get the full picture of what it's going to look like. I think you can get the most indication of what it might look like in the first quarter at the very least, right? Or the first half of the first quarter, because, that's when you get the starters and all of that. But even then, they're not playing at 100% speed. So it really is sort of kind of a dress rehearsal. You really don't, it's not like everybody's putting their all into it. I think the younger, the rookies and the players that have not secured a roster spot are the ones that are going to be playing their asses off, and that's kind of where some of the excitement lies. I think it was last night. I think it was last night. It was the Hawks and the Pacers, and that turned out to be a pretty fun game. A lot of fun. Some standout moments. There was one crazy play of Vit Krejci. He's like one of their kind of he recently, I think, signed like a contract with them. He got I think he got kind of pulled into the rotation as some of their other players were injured, but he had this one pass where he essentially like almost bowled the ball. Like he stole the ball and then almost like full court passed it to, I think it was Kobe Buffkin. Like that was just and it barely like slipped through the defender's hands. Like it was a crazy ass play, but that was really fun to watch. Also, their number one pick, there was a lot of talk about how this year's draft class is one of the weaker ones in recent memories. But I got to see the Hawks number one, Zachary Risacher, French player. A lot of French players nowadays, a lot of good French players going into the league, alongside Wembanyama. But he looked great. I mean, he looked really good. He's only 19, but just the stuff he was pulling off was like, dude, he had like a in-between pass to Clint Capella. He was hitting some shots. Like he looked really good. And so, I mean, that might be quite the pickup for the Hawks. I don't know how good Atlanta's really going to be this year. They're sort of like in a weird, last year they were really kind of in no man's land. It's just sort of that in-between area, similar to what the Bulls were. And they're going to be better than the Bulls, but there is kind of the feeling that they're still sort of lingering in that area, because it's like you have a bunch of these young, incredibly talented, players that, Risacher, like you could get a sense that he's going to be a pretty good, I don't know if he's going to be a star by any means, but it's hard to really determine, but he does look really good. You have Jalen Johnson, and Trae Young is still there though, right? So it's like they didn't go into like a full rebuild situation, and they didn't have to because they ended up getting the first pick anyway somehow. So it's kind of like it's a weird, they're in kind of like a weird area. They're definitely not in playoff contention. They're definitely they don't really, I don't know. It just doesn't feel like a team that wants to tank, right? And so it's I don't know. It just sort of is like they're just kind of in it's the highest I feel like they could get is in the lower bracket of the playoff standings, right? So it's like are they going to take the approach where they have Trae sort of continuing to lead the ship, have him sort of go back into a position where he was before DeJounte Murray got there, because that pairing didn't really work out, and just have him just be kind of the rule, the center of everything, and try to kind of work out from there with some of the new pieces that they do have. Like I don't know, it's like it's a kind of an interesting kind of situation, but it was really fun to watch them. So in terms of teams that, outside of the Warriors that I want to kind of keep my eye on, I think the Hawks might be one of them that I would like to watch. Speaking of that, I think this might be actually a pretty a good exercise. Like, what other, outside of my own, Warriors, like, what other teams am I interested in kind of watching during the season, right? I have League Pass, so I have the chance to watch, all of the teams if I wanted to. I think, I noted the Hawks, just sort of like it's just, and I also like Trae Young too. I feel that he has become underrated in the last couple of years after his, after that kind of conference finals run. There was just kind of this, they had like a pretty significant drop off and I don't know, just sort of like a bit of an underwhelming season following that. And then last year they didn't even make the playoffs. So it's been, his stock has sort of fallen off a little bit, but I still think he's an incredible player. He's really fun to watch. I don't really know what people's hangups are. Like, I know he's not a good defender. I get that. Maybe sort of like the Curry comparison is a bit drawn out, and I can see that too. But he has his own style of play. Like, sure, I'm sure some of the play of his shot making ability and whatnot were inspired by Steph, but that doesn't mean that he can, he's also an incredible ball handler and playmaker and that kind of thing. So in terms of just offensive prowess, he's up there. And I think that it's been a little bit, just because there have been some disappointments in the last couple of years with the Hawks just not, getting to that same level as they did during their Eastern Conference Finals run. I don't think that takes away the fact that he's still a really fun player to watch. So I feel that Atlanta still has that going. It's really hard to determine what direction they're heading in, but at least they still have Trae Young. If it doesn't work out, it's like, okay, maybe they can try to really go into rebuild mode and have the young players just kind of, build into something and try just haul and, just haul their assets, just trade all of their older players, Clint Capella, DeAndre Hunter, just clean up shop and just try to rebuild with some of their younger pieces. But I don't know. It's like, does it make sense to trade kind of your franchise player just to kind of go in that direction? If it feels like there is still maybe a chance that they could be good later down the line. I don't know. It just is, it's a weird place to be. But again, I think they're going to be a fun team to watch. Another team I think is going to be the Thunder. I did watch the Thunder, a decent amount last year as well. This year they're going to be even better. They're probably going to be one of the best teams in the league again. It feels like they're kind of a clear favorite out in the West, and it's possible that they might have the best record in the league. You never know. I mean, Boston's still there and everything, but they kept all their pieces. They, they traded Giddey, got back Caruso, and they got Hartenstein. Like, it's just like a complete team. Like, it's just like they have like a crazy roster now. It's like, dude, how? It's almost unfair. And they have all of these draft picks, so it's like, yeah, you know what? We can actually go and get like another superstar if we wanted to. Like, they can do that because they have the draft capital. It's like, it's ridiculous. Like, what they've been able to do. It is really, and kind of in hindsight, in retrospect, it is really funny, kind of the conversations that were going about the team when they were terrible, like a few years ago, when they lost by like 60 points to the Grizzlies. Like they had just like a barely functioning NBA roster. They were considered like the black eye of the league and all of that, and just look where they are. You know what I mean? So it's so things can really turn on a dime. You really don't know when it comes to sports. Like, even like Sacramento is like a team that was sort of notorious for not being just being one of the teams that haven't been able to go to the playoffs for like 15 plus years, and they were able to break that curse recently. So there's a lot of developments happening across the league. There's the parity is at kind of an all-time high. There's been like 5-6 different NBA champions over the last 6 seasons, which is really crazy. So I feel because of that, because of how many many good players there are and how many just like moving pieces there can be. Nothing is for certain, even like the most dog shit teams, like what the Thunder were, can just, some just rise to where they are, because of, good management and good player development, good coaching. Like that there's a lot of, factors to key in. Like not every franchise is going to be like the Thunder, but they sort of have found a way to make it work. So I don't know. Good for them. It seemed like, they were in a bit of a tricky spot after trading like Westbrook and really kind of going into the tank. I mean they had that one year with Chris Paul and Paul George, but that didn't really was Paul George on that team? Or what? No, it was Westbrook and Paul George, right? That kind of season, and that didn't work out, and then just kind of going right into the tank and ending up here, kind of years and years down the line. So, but yeah, they're going to be a really fun team to watch. It's just like they just have so many good players. Like it's like 10 deep. It's kind of crazy. So I'll definitely be keeping an eye out on them. I'm very interested. New York was one of the teams that I was really watching last year. I thought that the run they had, just kind of leading into, them getting the second seed, was really great. I thought that they just had a bunch of really, likable players, and Brunson is fun to watch, and they just had just like a really great, team chemistry and everything like that. And I don't know, it's like easy to sort of see yourself rooting for them, even if they aren't your team necessarily. So I do anticipate myself watching the Knicks play as well. They, obviously they had the big shakeup in getting Cat. But I don't know. It should still be fun to watch. They may not be as deep as they were, because now they're suddenly super top heavy with their starting five. But I do think that they'll still be like a fun watch. I think that I was actually watching earlier today. I was watching them play against, it was a preseason game against the Wizards, and I just saw like the defense from Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby. Like it was just like like just hands everywhere. Like they had like, it felt like they had like three. It was like back to back steals. Like it was it was pretty crazy. So I like on the defensive end, I think those two players are just going to be awesome to watch. Just to see their kind of defensive prowess. But I do think the offensive end with Cat, like Brunson and that kind of thing, can also be a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to checking them out. Another team that I think would be, I am sort of interested in watching, staying on kind of the East, Eastern Conference, I think is the Pacers again. They had like a pretty incredible run going into the Eastern Conference Finals. They pretty much kept like all of the pieces. But I mean they are just like the insane high octane offense that they have. I mean they are one of the most fun teams to watch in the league. Just the constant just like pushing of the pace, like literally, right? And them just kind of moving the basketball around, and Halliburton at the kind of the at the point of it. Like it's just good to watch. I think obviously the biggest drawback for them is the defense, but it might just be one of the cases where they just outshoot you. they're just like they just have just the most offense out of any team, and they just like outscore you, you know what I mean? So I don't know. It just seems like it just seems like I think them continuing it, having another year with Siakam and everything, should probably help out with just continuity and all that. So they're another team that I have my eye on. I'm like struggling to like I think I enjoy watching. It is kind of funny. I feel I have an easier time watching Eastern Conference teams and having sort of like this weird interest in them, because most of the time those games don't really affect the standing with the Warriors, you know what I mean? Because there's a lot of teams in the West that I'm just kind of like, it's, great to watch, but I don't want either of these teams to win. You know what I mean? So it's like, for example, if it's like the Lakers and the Mavericks or something like that, I don't really want either. Shout out Clay. I'll be cheering for him kind of, but I won't be cheering for the Mavericks. Like I said, I don't really I don't as a Warriors fans, I don't really like either team, so I don't really want to cheer for them. So it just like makes me not want to. You know what I mean? It's a little different than if it's just like, honestly, it's kind of a dumb thing. It's just personal. It's like I'd rather watch like the Bulls and the Pistons than the Lakers and the Mavericks. I'm gonna regret saying that. You know what I mean? Because I'm sure that other game, the Dallas LA game, is going to be far more exciting. But you know what I mean? It's just like if there are teams involved that directly we are in competition in, it's a little less. I don't know. It's just like I don't really want to cheer for either of these teams. So I don't know. It's just kind of funny to think about. So for me, it's easier to watch Eastern Conference teams and be like, oh, this is kind of interesting. I wonder how this is going to turn out, as opposed to two Western Conference teams outside of the Warriors competing with each other, because it's just like I have actual sort of investment here and competitive sort of investment, and in a dream scenario I don't want either of these teams to win, but I guess I'll have to take this one. So it's just kind of I don't know. I think I find myself, if it isn't the Warriors, I find myself watching Eastern Conference teams more. And plus, those games do start earlier technically as well, so I'm able to catch like at least like the ends of those games. It's like if the Warriors do come on, it's like I'm really only paying attention to the Warriors and not really watching any of the other like Western Conference teams as well. So I think in that sense it makes it a little easier, unless the Warriors are playing like in the East. It's just like I tend to be able to watch the Eastern games more so than the ones in the West. So maybe that kind of plays into my bias a little bit. Another team I'm interested in checking out is the Sixers, right? They got Paul George. They got some other pieces. They got Caleb Martin. They got Gershon Yabusele, who had a really great Olympics run. We'll see if that translates into NBA success, but they got some decent. They got Andre Drummond. They got some decent pieces, and we'll see if that will lead them to finally get past the second round. We'll see about that. I mean, they do have a solidified big three now. I think Paul George fits into that mix better than James Harden did, just because of his position and his versatility as a player. And so I think that should sort of, in theory, it should work out pretty well. And I just think that it's kind of like, this is it's kind of getting into the period where it might be difficult for someone like Embiid to be kind of in playoff contention as he has over the last few years. He's not going to be to the same level. Like in a few years, he's just not going to be the MVP level of player that he has been. So really, I think it's going to be the next couple of years that you kind of have to sort of like maximize that window of having Embiid be sort of at his peak, right? At his prime, if he isn't like right now. So I'm interested to see kind of if they're able to capitalize on that and really, try to essentially just go for it, right? I mean, it's right now. Like the time for them is kind of right now. And I feel there's going to be a bit more. I don't know what to call it. Last year, Embiid got injured for a significant amount of time, and they fell down to the 7th seed, where they faced up against the Knicks. Embiid was pretty hobbled and that kind of thing, so he wasn't playing at 100%, but he still put up like 50 or something. He did play, he did play pretty reckless, and I think some New York fans definitely took note of that and weren't happy about it. And Embiid is probably public enemy number one to Knicks fans. So it would be pretty exciting to see those two teams again in the playoffs, just to see kind of the vitriol between fans. But I think I'm just kind of curious to see the approach they take, because Embiid also talked about how he's not going to go for MVP or accolades or whatever. So it seems like there is like kind of a clear direction they're going with in terms of just keeping him and keeping him healthy, right? Will that kind of be a sacrifice in a similar way to getting kind of a lower seed? And if that's the case, I don't know. I don't think you should be a lower seed. Like, you should definitely be going for top 4 at the very least. As I have as I have continued to kind of ring the bell on in the past like 20 plus years or something like that, if you are not a top 3 seed, you are not winning the championship. That's just kind of like, because then you're one of the best teams in the league. You have to be one of the best teams in the league to do so, and you have to show up during the regular season. So I know people say, "Oh, regular season doesn't matter," and all that. It just, like, that stat alone, just your standing, being in the top 3 matters, I think. And until some lower seeded team comes in, it's like, oh, a Cinderella run, some crazy ass run happens. I will kind of hold strong to that fact, because that has not wavered at all. That has been the case for very, very long time, right? There was maybe like something that happened like in the 90s where like maybe I have to look back, but for the last 25 plus years or something, no, only 3 seed and above have won the NBA championship, and that's just kind of that's going to probably continue to be the case, because it's just like best team wins the championship, right? We had kind of that, the Heat getting to the finals. That was, they had like a crazy run, but they just did not have a chance against the Nuggets, right? That was really kind of like the one. That was really one of the instances where it's like, oh, maybe this is like the potential to break this streak. Last year as well, like you had the Mavericks, they were the fifth seed, and there was maybe were they the 4th seed, 5th or 4th? I don't remember. 4th seed, so that they could have potentially done it, but they just they fell a little short. So I don't know. It just is. That's going to kind of remain true. And so I understand kind of that approach of wanting to keep Embiid healthy, but is that going to be kind of in lieu of standings? I think if you are the Sixers, you still need to be one of the top teams in the East. You can't afford to go into, you can't afford to let go of home court advantage, in the first round especially. So I do feel like there's got to be some sort of balance that needs to be struck. I do think they have a bit more flexibility now that they do have Paul George and his level of play. And we'll see how well that kind of works out in tandem with Maxey. And, one more year of Maxey, he's going to be even better this year. So I think it will be interesting to see how they approach it, if they are able to kind of get to a certain level. Maybe they show off and they they get the 1 seed. It turns out they are actually that good. Then they'll be like, okay, now the conversation is, can they finally prove themselves to get past the first round, get into the conference finals, and get into the finals. We'll see about that. But they are kind of like that. I don't know. They are sort of like a big question mark for me. I'm interested to see how that works out. So they're kind of one of the other teams that I have sort of my eye on. Other teams, I'm trying to think. Really, mostly it is kind of a lot of Eastern Conference teams that do kind of come to mind. The Bucks, I don't like. They're also a question mark as well. I just don't have a lot of faith. They're just old. Like that's just kind of what it is. Like Chris Middleton now has like 2 knees. He has like 2 issues with both of his knees. Like I feel for him. He had like a great run, but I just think it might be up for him. He had like a really nice, he had a nice couple of games in the playoffs last year with Giannis out, but it's just, it might be it. Like, I think that might be kind of it for him. And Brook Lopez is older. Dame is also kind of older too. Like, I don't know how well he's going to perform. Like, it's just, I don't know. I just don't have like a ton of faith in that team. They still have Giannis, but he just has to stay healthy. Like, he has been injured in the last 2 years, right? And that just kind of resulted in a first round loss. So I don't know. I don't have like a ton of faith in that team. And they're just old. That's just kind of what it comes down to it. Other teams that I kind of have my eye on. Here's a really interesting one. The Pistons. So the Pistons had the worst. Was it the worst? I think it was the worst losing streak in the NBA history. Right? 28, I think. Is that the worst? I think it might be. Just like a really awful season for them. I felt just, I did start, once it got to like 10 or so, the losing streak, I was like, all right, I'm going to kind of tune in to see how bad, like, it's just sort of morbid curiosity. I just wanted to see like how bad this team was. And, they were not great. They were definitely not good. And so this year, there's a part of me that really wants to see them have some level of success, whether it is just winning like 10 more games or potentially, because it is the East, like I feel there is more of a chance for them to get into like a play-in position despite being like below 500, right? Like you saw the Hawks last year, they were below 10 games and they still made it to the play-in. So that is entirely possible. That is definitely in the cards. I don't know if they can make that much of a leap considering how poor they were last year, but there's a part of me that wants to cheer for them as just kind of like the underdog franchise. They made some changes this year. I think they fired their general manager. They got a new one. They fired Monty Williams, and they got JB Bickerstaff. Hopefully that's a bit of an upgrade there, because like Monty Williams just did not give a fuck. Like he did not give a fuck about that team. He was there for a paycheck. It's like, he essentially played himself out of of a head coaching gig, which is interesting. But I don't know. I want to see them be better and have some success. They're not going to be a good team still, but I want to see. I don't want the team. The league is already the league is really good right now. Like there are so many great teams. Like there really is only a few teams that I would consider to be really bad. I think Washington is one. You can look at the Trailblazers. They're going to be pretty bad. The Spurs were bad last year, but they're probably going to be better this year. The Jazz are not that great. And then you got the Pistons. But I have a feeling that they'll be a little bit better this year. I kind of want them to succeed. I know Detroit fans have been through a lot of shit, and I feel that, I hope that they're able to, get some success from their team. And I'll be watching. I've watched a couple of their preseason games. Jaden Ivey is really fun to watch. Super fast, it's just like a great. I don't know. He could be a really exciting player. Jalen Duren, there's a lot of potential with him and being, kind of the young center. He's still super young. He's only like 2021, right? And you got Cade, who just signed like a extension recently. So I don't know. There's a lot of pieces with them, a lot of young pieces, and now they've added some actual NBA players that could sort of help develop and help get them to a better place and actually win some games. So I think they'll be a little bit better if they do get into like a play-in position. If they're like the 10th seed, that's awesome. That would be awesome. I think that would be like an awesome year. I don't really expect that because in that kind of area, there are still some teams that can somehow the Bulls are still going to be in the play-in, despite the fact that they should probably find a direction to go in with that roster after trading away DeMar DeRozan. But yeah, that's kind of what would be a good thing for the Pistons, is to actually be somewhat competitive. And so, yeah, I'm sort of rooting for them, kind of rooting for Pistons fans as well. And hopefully they get somewhere in the next, if it's not this year, maybe in the next couple of years. Anyways, that's going to be it for now. I'll probably have more things to talk about later this week as more preseason games come up and we started, slowly start to, get into the regular season, the start of the regular season. But yeah, I'll hold off on all that stuff and leave it off for now, and I'll catch up later this weekend probably. All right, recording this on October 14th. It is a Monday evening. It's gotten darker. We've finally hit kind of this fall period where it gets cooler a lot quicker. Sun's coming down. And I know it's sort of funny saying that, considering that really it was only like last week where we sort of had that heat wave going on. But in the last like few days or so, I think it's really kind of shifted to this type of weather, and it's been really nice. Obviously, I'm holding hope that it's going to continue to be this way, and there's not gonna be some other heat wave that comes through this month or something crazy like that. It feels, I'm hopeful, knock on wood, that it is going to maintain and remain to be kind of in this fall season, cooler weather, sweater weather, whatever you want to call that. It's going to be another kind of staggered sort of release for this. Last week I kind of recorded it earlier in the week, or rather kind of middle of the week, and then wasn't able to record until the beginning of last week. So that's kind of the same thing for this one as well. Had a bit of a had some things this weekend to take care of, so wasn't able to get to recording, but that's all right. I'm just gonna take care of and catch up on some things today. I will be out of the country, actually, heading out to the UK for a little bit, visiting a friend. So I'm very much looking forward to that. So next week or whatever, I'm thinking it's probably going to be a bit of a shorter episode for the next week, next week's episode. So, I might try to just cram in some stuff to talk about, later on this week, before I head out. But yeah, it might be a bit of a shorter episode. That kind of has me thinking, since my flight is going to be, somewhat long. I didn't do this the last time I traveled earlier this year. And I kind of regretted it a little bit, a little bit, you know. I just kind of, I'm someone who doesn't really want to bring too much stuff on trips and that kind of thing. But part of me wished that I did bring my Switch that last time. So this time, I think that I will be actually bringing it, and I'll be spending that time playing some games, especially Zelda. I've kind of I haven't really I've taken a bit of a sort of like a break from it. I just haven't really had, the time and like the energy to delve into Zelda too much recently. But I'm hoping that once I am kind of on one of the flights, I can spend some time, catching up on that game. I think that's just like kind of the perfect opportunity, right? Uh, Excuse me. I have a difficult time just sleeping on travel, just in general. So, I think I'm just gonna spend that time just like, yeah, catching up, playing some Echoes of Wisdom. I've missed playing that. I just yeah, I just haven't had the chance to get around to it. So, I would like to get back into it. And honestly, I think that, as I mentioned before, this, I don't want to just kind of rush through it because it is a bit of a shorter game. I really just want to enjoy my time with it. And so I feel this might be just like the perfect opportunity to do that, honestly. Handheld mode, Zelda, that just kind of like brings me back to when I played like some of the other, 2D handheld Zelda games, whether it's like the DS ones, or the 3DS one. I mean, it was really only Link Between Worlds for that one, but it just sort of brings me back to that, and it's sort of like the perfect setting for that is handheld mode for Echoes of Wisdom. It just really fits with that. So yeah, that should be nice. On top of that, I'm thinking, because I don't know how much, I don't know if I'm going to beat the game by any means. I think I still have a bit of a ways to go with the game itself. I think I have like a few more dungeons left and a few more kind of main areas to clear. But I think I want to supplement that with something else to play. Obviously, I'm going to have kind of the typical games that I've been playing for, you know, just all, most of the time over the last couple of years. But I think there are a couple of other games that I might add on to the list just so I can kind of vary it up. So Yeast 10 actually, it looks like was released today, and it comes out with a demo, which is awesome. I love that. I really think the demo approach is really just like a great way to incentivize players who might be on the fence about a particular game, who maybe hasn't experienced that specific genre or series before, to just give it a taste. A lot of demos. I think one that comes to mind is the Dragon Quest XI demo. That one is like super extensive. It goes, I think, like a couple of like you can put in like 20 plus hours into the demo alone, right? Which is awesome. Just like the value of it, just, free. It's essentially like a free game. Obviously you would need to get the rest of the game to complete it. But I think that it's just like a good, I understand this. Demos are primarily for, some more larger games than say like indie games. I understand for indie games, it's like you want to kind of generate just the sales like sort of immediately. But I think that if companies are able to supply a demo for their games, I think it's just like a great way to just bring up, just bring some enthusiasm for the game, and again bring in like a new audience, right, that may not have been interested before. I think it's just like it's like a good marketing tool for one, and then also it's nice to have that option, right? And it allows the player, the consumer, to make a decision whether they want to make the full purchase or not. I'm most likely going to get the full game. Maybe a little later down the line, but I've heard that the demo is pretty lengthy as well. So I think that I'll probably download the demo, and I'll probably I think I'm gonna play that as a part of my trip. So that should be fun. I haven't played. I mean, the last game, the last East game that I played was East 8. I haven't played East 9. Mostly, I think what sort of deterred me from it, and this, I don't know. Maybe I will eventually pick it up or something, but there's a few things that deterred me from purchasing it. One, the Switch performance I've heard is pretty bad, and two, it's just not to the same level of quality as East 8. And I know that's that for me that's kind of a high bar to clear, but I also just was I just really enjoyed and appreciated a lot about East 8. It's one of my favorite like Switch games. And so that is kind of a high, high threshold to cross, but I just kind of, I hear sort of like, I know I heard East 9 is like a good game, but I also hear it's kind of mixed just in terms of the way, the way the story and kind of the pacing is structured and that kind of thing. So I'm like, maybe maybe I'll pass on this one. But I heard East 10 is really great. I think what draws me to it is sort of like just the brightness of it, just how colorful it looks. East 8 is a very colorful game. It takes place on like a tropical island and that kind of thing. And there's various like, aspects that, just like there's like ancient ruins and all that. And East 10 is sort of like you can command a ship. There's like ship battles. I'm like, that sounds awesome. Like there's more variety in gameplay. I'm really interested in seeing that. And based on kind of what I've heard, which is not like a ton, but some of the I don't know if you would necessarily call it like a critical review, because the game has only been released in Japan so far. This is kind of the North American release. But based on kind of like my brief look at those sort of, reviews, it seems like it's been pretty well received. So I'm excited to pick it up, but at the very least, I'm excited to play the demo and see what's up with that. Another game that also has a demo, is Emio, is the Famicom Detective Club. I have heard that the demo for that also has a pretty lengthy sort of, you have the ability to play it for a pretty, extended amount of time, delving into like multiple chapters and stuff. So, and that might be like a really nice sort of, I mean, it's primarily like a visual novel. There's not like a ton of, action, right? With that kind of thing. So that might be like a perfect sort of pairing for what I'm, maybe just need to take a break from some of the more action intensive games. And just, I want to like, I don't know, essentially like read a book of sorts and get into kind of like an interesting mystery. And I've heard that the story is really well done, and that definitely draws me in. I haven't played like a ton of really visual novels. The only one that I can really say is 13 Sentinels, but 13 Sentinels also has it has the simulation tactical tactical gameplay aspect to it as well. But outside of that, that's really kind of the only quote unquote visual novel that I've played. So I'm interested in seeing if this type of game kind of suits my tastes, but I feel that just based on kind of what the reception of the story is, and just sort of like what I've heard people say about the story being very well done, I think this might be up my alley. So that might be something where I want to download the demo and check it out. Perfect for that. So so I have like a few games on kind of that on the docket that I feel like I can kind of use to kill the amount of time that I have in between, on flights, in between flights, that kind of thing. So I think I'll be pretty well well set up in that sense. But I'm looking forward to it. There's a lot of things that I've been meaning to kind of get into, and I feel like this is like the right opportunity for that. This is the last week, kind of switching gears. This is the last week of preseason basketball. Next week we start some actual games. I'll try my best to try to catch what I can. I'll most likely just be watching the highlights, but I've sort of given some thoughts, some early preseason thoughts when I recorded last week. There's a few more things that I kind of want to touch on. So the Warriors had a preseason game yesterday. I wasn't able to watch all of it, but I watched a decent chunk of it. And so far, I mean, I understand you really don't want to overreact to preseason. I get that. I understand. But the 3-point shooting has been really good. I don't know how much of that is going to carry over into the regular season, but it's looked awesome. And it might just be the fact that it's kind of like an open gym situation. They haven't been playing like the highest quality opponents, right? Like Buddy Hield and Melton are easily far better than like the second and third stringers of any of the any of the other teams that have been brought out. So I just again, you can only read so much into it, but they've been shooting the hell out of the ball, and it's looked really great. At least the offense has looked really good. That might be something where we just kind of sort of stay within like the Pacers style. I know Pacers style, but like that sort of the way they primarily function, which is kind of the run and gun and shoot as much as they can style of basketball, that might kind of suit this sort of iteration of the Warriors. The defense hasn't really quite been there. There's been some nice defensive moments. Shout out to Trace Jackson Davis. He continues to have some really nice moments during the preseason. Again, hopefully that carries over into the regular season. But I like what I see. It's nice. I know it's I don't want to overreact or anything, but it's nice to have some sense of optimism. Of course, I am skeptical about a lot of things, and I don't have a ton of I've already laid out my expectations, and I'm not really deviating from that, but there is like a bit more of a sense of optimism going into the start of the season, and I just like what I see. I think it should be fun. I think it should be fun to watch this team, regardless of what our position is and whether we are even in the run for contention, which I highly doubt. But I like what I see. So hopefully some of that carries over, and we get to see some of the younger players shine. And I don't know how cohesive that's going to be between the vets and the youth or whatever, but it is what it is. That's just kind of the direction we're going with. So just gonna have to do what we can. But hey, listen, I'll watch if Steph's playing. Along with that, I've been able to watch some more preseason games. There's been some nice little surprises here and there of some rookies going off and that kind of thing. Really, it's hard to read too much else from that because these are just not the rotations that we're gonna see. Like you're having third string players play like 20 minutes, like that's just not something that happens. But there have been some interesting moments already. One that kind of comes to mind was yesterday. The Timberwolves were playing the Knicks for preseason in New York. after, obviously the cat trade and everything. And I saw some bits and pieces of that game. And they were going pretty, they were pretty competitive, at least for kind of like parts of the first half. And that was a pretty, I like that energy. That's going to be an exciting matchup to see in the regular season. I think that it will be, I don't know when the first time those two teams are going to play is, but it's going to be kind of fascinating because you'll see like what, how each team has essentially adjusted to their new roster, right, with their new additions. And you can kind of, you can sort of get a bit of a sense of, how well, whether one team is gelling a little better than the other, right? Is Cats fit better with New York versus DiVincenzo's and Randall's in Minnesota? That's kind of an interesting, conundrum. We haven't seen Randall play with Minnesota yet. Still kind of, it seems like they're just being cautious with his injury from last year. So it's just like such a, I don't know, it's very intriguing. New York especially, like, shaked up their roster pretty significantly, right? I mean, they essentially let go of 2 rotational players, and, their bench, I think, like, outside of, I'm trying to think, who was new? Like, I mean, there's, like outside of, like, Achua, their bench is, like, completely, just revamped. Like, not necessarily in a good way. I'm just saying, like, it's just, like, a new players on the bench. Like, so they're a bit thin in terms of their rotation and in terms of the, talent level of those players. But, is having such, like, a top heavy starting lineup enough to kind of bolster the rest of the team? I don't know. There's a lot of different questions to look at, and I think that outside, I mentioned, earlier, it'll be the same episode for when this goes out. But when I talked about it last week about the teams that I was most intrigued about, I think, I did mention New York, but I also think I would put Minnesota on that list as well. Just because they've, it's kind of like in tandem. They have similar kind of narratives going on. I mean, one of them went to the Western Conference Finals. The other kind of flamed out because of injuries and whatnot. But, the personnel and everything, there's a lot of connections there. And so I'm interested in seeing if there's going to be like a continued storyline. There was like a little kind of beef thing going on between, what's his name? Brunson. Jake, what's his name? Brunson, not Jalen Brunson's dad. What is his name? Dave Brunson? I forgot his name. No, it's not Jalen. It doesn't start with a J. I can't think of his name. It's just completely like Rick Brunson. And DiVincenzo had like some kind of like argument or something. It's like, ooh, it's a little spicy, So that could be something. That could be a little narrative thing going on too. So there's a lot of connections right now with Minnesota and New York. The WNBA finals are also happening, which is the Minnesota Lynx and New York Liberty. So there's that connection as well. So some interesting New York and Minnesota connections. I don't know if that means anything at all, but I don't know. I just find it it just kind of sticks out a little bit, right? Like if the Timberwolves and the Knicks somehow ended up in the finals, that would be kind of I don't know. There's something to write about there, right? There's some kind of narrative. I speaking of that, I do think this is sort of like an interesting thought experiment where you think about, it's like, what matchup, and this is probably something that, you know, network and network executives probably think about. It's like, ooh, what would, obviously garner the most interest and get us the best ratings and most views. I understand that's, that's part of the sports and entertainment business. But just purely from like an interesting story perspective, it's like, what matchups would make the most interesting storyline or narrative? You know what I mean? It's like, what finals matchup this year would tell the most interesting story? And I know it doesn't, like, I'm not someone who, I don't I don't care too much about narratives, but there is something there is something that you can kind of take away or rather, not necessarily narrative per se, more like legacies, I would say. I don't care too much about that. Not too much. Because it's so subjective, right? But I do think that with those kinds of things, when you talk about the accolades of a player, or you look at Michael Jordan, two three-peats, no one kind of the modern era of the NBA has really achieved that. Like, you kind of look at that, and you also look at I don't know, just the amount of championships that players have. LeBron, Curry, Kobe, like, the greats that have gotten to that level, and it's like, okay, is this the one that's going to push them over the edge as the greatest of all, that kind of thing. But I think outside of that, it's more interesting to think about, like, what is kind of the circumstances that led to this point. Who are the players involved in kind of the finals? Is this kind of an interesting story to talk about? Are the players, kind of interesting to look at? Are they like, do they have something to gain from this championship? What are they striving for? That kind of thing, right? I think, really, and obviously I'm going to be a little biased here. The last sort of championship matchup that was the most interesting in the last little while, because the last two kind of have been a bit of a wash, was the 2022 championship with the Warriors and the Celtics, because a lot of that conversation was around Steph, right? And him essentially elevating this team and himself to a different level. And I mean, obviously it helps that Curry already has, an insane amount of stature. But this was, his first finals MVP, despite him being in the finals 5 other times. This is his first one. So that's, kind of something. And once he got to that level, it was just like, he kind of achieved essentially everything he's achieved. And then on top of that, I mean, this year what he did during the Olympics, like that definitely cemented his kind of quote unquote legacy or whatever. His story is a kind of, he could do more shit and it would be like, that would be crazy. And I think that's, that's sort of where the difficulty lies in right now, and with the Warriors, is like, what, the direction of the franchise and that kind of thing. And a lot of us, including myself, would want there to be at least one more, push to get to some level of competition, championship competition, or contention rather. But he's kind of done what he's been, he's done so much. So that was really I would argue that was kind of the last time there was like some kind of conversation, I guess you would say, some sort of, discussion about a great player doing great things. And we just haven't really gotten that the last couple of years. I mean, Jokic getting his first, getting Denver's first championship is something to talk about. It just wasn't a very interesting finals, series. I didn't even really watch this past year's NBA finals with the Celtics and the Mavericks. But you could argue there's something there about the Celtics finally getting over the hump and that kind of thing. But it's just not. I just don't know if it's the most. There's there. How do you if you're like a writer or something, if you're a sports journalist, I think. I mean, at least there are there's many different types of sports journalists, but I'm sure there are some out there that want to tell kind of a compelling story about a specific player or a team and going against another team. And I would argue that out of all the teams that are playing right now, I'm really trying to think. I'm trying to think what would make the most interesting finals matchup, and just in terms of obviously I think it would be a competitive series. And I know it's way too early. We haven't even seen any really any teams play any regular season games, and I'm looking way beyond, and this might not even come to fruition, obviously, but the matchup that makes that I feel would be the most interesting, I think at least one of them would be the Wolves and the Knicks. It just is, there's just so many things going on. Obviously, you got Cat, who played with Minnesota for his entire career, and then you got kind of the Randall and DiVincenzo piece. I think more so Randall because of what he was able to do with New York and how he was able to essentially kind of bring them to the position, help them bring to the position where they are now. There's a lot of, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of, I don't know, there's some emotional ties there. You could argue about like the Villanova boys and everything like that. So, I feel I'm really trying to think what else would be, and you can't manufacture that just ruins sports, right? Whatever comes out, whatever happens, but just in terms of the history of the specific players involved in each of these teams, that would probably be the most interesting finals matchup, right? And so I'm not necessarily hoping that it would be the case. It would just be cool to see that. I think it would be intriguing to watch both the game itself, but also just kind of the story that's kind of created from that. I think would be, I don't know. I think it would just kind of be cool to keep up, because I'm kind of struggling to think what other matchup would create the most, like, I don't know. I know there's the issue with that also is just kind of like the clickbait stories and whatnot, and I'm sure some of that popped up with the DiVincenzo kind of Rick Brunson sort of butting heads from yesterday, but that can kind of generate interest as well. There's history between the teams and whatnot, but yeah, I don't know what would another matchup be that would be really interesting to see in the finals. And I just can't really, I don't know. I can't really think of that. Maybe just narratively, the Bucks and the Nuggets, maybe, right? Giannis versus Jokic. And then outside of that, I don't know. There's a lot of younger teams. You could look at the Thunder. The Thunder they're just a good team. Like, I don't know what to say. They're just like a really good team. And they're them, winning their first champ. I don't think they've won. I don't think, have the Sonics won a championship? I don't think they have. But within their kind of history, as a franchise. They haven't won a championship, so their first championship, that could be something, right? But them going up against the Celtics is like, I mean, that would be a good matchup for sure, but would it create a good storyline? Does it write a good tale? I don't know. I don't know what I'm talking about, but hopefully I'm able to kind of convey what I mean. It's just like, of course, the basketball itself is the most important, but people care about, the superfluous stuff too, the stuff that doesn't necessarily matter, but it may matter to some people, which is kind of the connection between just the stories that are being told, right? So I don't know. That might be a good exercise. I think I might revisit this. I'm thinking if if there's anything else, if something kind of pops up during the regular season, there's just like, there's like a surprise team or something else kind of pops, just some unexpected event, some random player becomes just like an all-star out of the blue. That might be worth kind of picking up on, but it might be worthwhile just looking at it and rethinking what would make the most interesting finals matchup, just in terms of, the story of it. So that might be a cool little thing to revisit just kind of throughout the year. Right now, though, I would probably say the Knicks and the Wolves, I think, would make the most interesting, just in terms of everything that I already mentioned before. Anyways, I'm gonna leave it off at that. I will try to find the time to talk a little bit more, sometime during this next week, to record next week's episode. Do some more catch up if I play something, new, or I want to talk about obviously more basketball stuff. I will try to kind of do that and sort of squeeze that in. But anyways, that's going to do it for this episode. This has been Save the Semantics, signing off.